Welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show on 94.7 The Pulse. Music, interviews, news, and, well, two blokes chatting. Now, here are the two blokes.
That is a song called Never Gonna Fall in Love Again. I was going to try and play a little bit of Sergei Rachmaninoff's third movement of his Second Symphony, which sounds very much like it, a song that was based on it. But the voice that you heard singing that song from 1976, I'm going to suggest, is the voice you're about to hear now, and his name is Mark Holden. Good morning, Mark, and welcome to the Two Blokes Chatting radio show.
Hey, what a great idea to play the Rachmaninoff thing. I wish you had. I would love to have heard that.
All right. Well, while Rob's talking to you, I'm going to see if I can, because I've got it on YouTube or something at the moment, so that's why it's not easy to do, and we're not technically allowed to do that on YouTube. You understand?
That doesn't matter.
Mark,
okay. Thank you for your time this morning. Your career was one of great interest. There was many... Oh, here we go.
You can hear it, can't you?
You can.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes, I think Eric Carmen might have had something to say on the way through, didn't he?
Well, what actually happened was that Sergei Rachmaninoff didn't die until the 1920s or 1930s or something like that. And so when Eric Carmen thought he was ripping off Rachmaninoff and he could get away with it, he thought he'd probably died in the 19th century or something like that, but he didn't. He died in the 20th century. So Never Gonna Fall in Love Again and All By Myself, which was also a Rachmaninoff ripoff. When Celine Dion recorded All By Myself, you know, in the 80s or 90s or whenever she recorded it, and it sold 20 million records, the label at that point said E. Carmen S. Rachmaninoff. and Serge Rachmaninoff's great-grandchildren got the royalties from 20 million Seen Along records. They wouldn't have made much from Mark Holden's record, let me put it that way.
I think I'm right in saying also on the album The Innocent Man by Billy Joel, there's a song called This Night, which is based on a piece by Beethoven. I think it says B.J. L. Beethoven.
But Beethoven really would have been out of copyright.
Well, he wouldn't have heard it anyway, would he?
But Serge Rachmaninoff was very much still in copyright in the 19th.
Wow.
So it's a really fascinating story, that one. It's great that you picked up on that one. I love the fact that Celine Dion's great-grandchildren got 20 million sales.
Absolutely.
Magnificent.
But Mark, we've kind of got, I guess, 3 or 4 phases to your life that many people might identify with. One, you were, as Rob pointed out to you, and by the way, this is Neil, Rob's the other voice, that you were standing on Countdown with a carnation and not a rose in your hand. I've had to prove them all wrong this morning. And then, of course, there was the time when you were working in the US. Then there was the time where people identified with you as the Australian Idol judge. And more recently, you've joined the legal fraternity. So we've got some time to unpack all of that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's been a fabulous journey, that's for sure, and I'm just very happy to be still alive and have most of my brain cells.
The dual, going back to when you were very young, you were studying law and doing the singing, and then one overlapped the other for a period of time anyway. What with the singing at that stage, coupled with studying law, which was the one that you were most excited about doing well in? I could have cared less about doing well at law. I did the bare minimum to pass every year, and because between lectures and I'd run out to the refectory where there was a piano and try and write songs, and I was doing gigs at. I was making a living in Adelaide in those days by I was a bartender and also sang at a particular bar in the city, and also at the Pancake Kitchen, and I was the gig thing, the songwriting, the music was very much the driving force of my life, and law was something that I did because I felt I had to do something, and I couldn't have imagined that I could really have made a living from music. It seemed fantastical, but as life unfolded, I found that I could make a living from music, and so I moved to Sydney from Adelaide in my final year of law, but that was too much. I couldn't, taxation law killed me. I just thought, no,
And I just went through that last year. I just dropped one subject after another, and I only passed one subject in my last year, but then I came back to it when I moved back from America in '96. In '98, I went back to uni and started again on my law degree at Monash Uni here in Melbourne. I really enjoyed it the second time around because I had a little life experience and I really enjoyed the studying part of it. But then in the middle of that, I found Vanessa Amorosi, and her thing started to blow up. And so I was at law school again with music blowing. But this time I was determined to finish. So I was doing my study in tour buses and when I was on the road with Vanessa, but I was really determined to see it through and get the degree that time, and I managed to do that. And then Vanessa really took off, and so I didn't use the law degree, but then after Idol in 2008, I was 56. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I was too young to retire. I wanted to use my brain, and so I did the apprenticeship. The articles to become to be registered as a practitioner, and then I was accepted into the bar readers course, which is the barristers course at the Victorian Bar, and I went straight to the bar, and I signed the bar roll in 2009, and I just put my retirement notice in last week. Retiring as of the 30th of April. I will be a retired barrister. 12 years was enough for me. I did 12 years, and that was huge. And I really valued and value having that time as a barrister because it was kind of like seeing what my sliding doors life could have been like if I had chosen law earlier. And being a barrister is a very honourable profession, and it's you're dealing with people, unfortunately, that everything else has failed. You only brief a barrister because nothing you've done up until that moment has worked. You haven't been able to resolve it. You haven't been able to settle it. It's in litigation, and litigation is just a horror show. It's the worst of times for most people, and it's very, very stressful. And I came to the conclusion, and when I was grateful to do it, and I really enjoyed it, and I did some really good work, I think, but I've realised well and truly that my choice to be a musician was the right choice.
Oh, well, it's good to be validated.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated, Mark. You go back to the heady days of Adelaide. In Victoria, they put fluoride in the water to make our teeth all very nice. What did they put in the water in Adelaide in the 50s and 60s to make the music system? Not in terms of the taste of the water, that was one thing, but in terms of the musicians that came out of there, it must have been. It
was the English diaspora, really. That is what it was. But just on that note, Melbourne water is the best water in the world. It's so bloody good, having lived in Los Angeles for 16 years and living in Adelaide. In Adelaide, the water came from the river, and it was brown.
Yeah.
But
and tasted like it.
Melbourne water is just fantastic, man. But no, in terms of the music in Adelaide, it was the English diaspora. It was all the state government created a bunch of suburbs north of Adelaide and south of Adelaide and over in Whyalla, and for the English immigrants. So the Scots and the English came out, and the Welsh came out in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And a lot of them, that's where the John Farnhams and the John Swans and
Glenn Shorrock was one we found out started there.
Glennis was one.
Graham Goebel.
Graham Goebel, yep. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many.
Well, that bloke Barnes, he sings as well, doesn't he? Jimmy, I think his name is.
And he's of course the classic version of the story I just told.
Yeah, very much so.
He's the guy that grew up in those what they called the housing trust suburbs.
Mark, did your family influence you into the music, or did you listen to music as a youngster and have your passion come from there?
In a deep way, my family did influence my music, but in a way that I've uncovered later in life, in the sense that my father used to sing in the bathroom. He was a really, really beautiful singer, and he would sing after a few bottles of red on a Sunday, and Mum would play the piano. But they never ever considered music. None of us ever really considered music as an option for a career path in those days. It just wasn't something that you thought of. But the truth of it was that my father actually came from Melbourne, and my family, the Holdens, actually are from the Bellarine.
Oh.
And I didn't know it when I grew up, but I knew only part of the story when I grew up, and that was that my family had a circus called the Holden Brothers Travelling Circus, and they were Bellarine based, and I went out to the Victorian Archives at some point. I was doing an appearance at the Victorian Archives for something, I can't remember what it was, and they handed me all these documents, the entire history of the Holden family, but also an inquest document from a guy called Samuel Holden from, the inquest was in 1868. And I'm reading these first-hand handwritten documents from 1868 about my forefather who first settled in Australia in 1852 at Indented Head, and on the Bellarine. And then there were the inquest was being held because the question was, had his sons killed him? And I was reading this, I'm going,
oh dear,
what the bloody hell is this? I'd never heard of Samuel Holden. I didn't know who he was. I'd never heard. My father hadn't talked about it. My father talked about us having the circus, and he talked about, my father talked about his grandfather, William Holden, having a coffee palace at St Leonard's, as well as a farm. They were all farmers, and that my great grandfather was a piano player and a tap dancer, but he was a kind of a Quaker, because of his father, this original guy, Samuel Holden, in 1852. He was a complete mental case and an alcoholic, and you know he had 10 kids. Most of them broke out farms down on the Bellarine, and of course that meant that they were the original dispossessors of the Wathaurong, and that was a story had never even entered. None of this I knew about. My father didn't know about it. But my father left Victoria after World War II and moved to Adelaide with my mother because his father was gassed in World War I and was a very sickly man, and it wasn't a happy house. But my dad went to Scotch College in the 1930s in Melbourne on the back of selling the properties down in, because he never worked. He wasn't able to work. He was what they call TPI, totally and partially incapacitated from the war. But they sold those blocks of land that were Wathaurong country down there in Geelong. And it's just that connection to the story has had such a deep resonating effect on me that of discovering it this late in life, that I've written a book which I've just finished and handed to my literary agent this last week, and which fictionalizes that story, but tells of the dispossession by my great grandfather Samuel Holden, and that's got me into a new part of my life, which is telling the story that I'm telling you right now, and my discovery of it, and I've been down to the Wathaurong Centre down there in Geelong, and I've met with some fantastic people there who have been incredibly generous, including the late Uncle Dave Tournier. He is an elder down there who told me the stories and gave me the insight into those dispossessions and what my relatives did back in those days, and it's been an extraordinary journey, actually. Really, it's filling my days with deep interest and coming to grips with the cultural divide and my family's role in it, and the fact that it, like I said, my father went to bloody Scotch College on the back of, the land that his grandfather dispossessed.
Well, Mark, when the book is published, given our listening audience is primarily the areas you're talking about, please get in touch and we'll get you to come in and either telephone or drop in and talk through the book and see if we can't give...
I love that part of the world. I really do love that part of the world. And it's been an incredible journey that my father, as I said, left. And so I didn't grow up with it. We visit, once a year or so often. And but the circus people were people that, my Presbyterian grandmother, they were Catholic circus people, and she was a Presbyterian non-circus person. Circus people in the 50s and 40s and 30s were regarded as kind of like gypsies,
Yeah.
Mark, this has been sensational. This stuff fascinates me, and you've taken us to places I wasn't expecting to go, and I don't really want to go down that theme. I think we'll save it up when the book is about to hit the publisher, about to hit the book stands. But it's incredible, and your honesty and openness about it, and clearly interest is wonderful. And I'd love to take this up another day. But I'm intrigued also about the other phase of your life, which was a bit of an oddity with what you've described about it, and that was the period as the Idol judge and the controversy that come with it, and you were loved by many and probably despised by a few that watched the show. How did you come to get into that? And looking back, what was that period of your life like?
Oh, it was fabulous. I loved it so much. It was an incredibly fabulous experience for me, even though it ended the way it did. In the fullness of time, I look back on it and I just love it. I was in Germany with Vanessa. She was having hits in Germany, and I got a call from the producer, Fremantle Television. I think it was Grundy's still then. I think they were still called Grundy's then. The old Grundy's who I did the Young Doctors for. So it's a strange how the world turns in circles.
Yeah.
But they asked if I would be interested in being involved in a new show, and I kind of knew what they wouldn't tell me what it was, but I knew what it was because there were versions of it in Europe already, and so I'd said there was a version in England that I can't remember. It wasn't called Idol, but it was this. Now we've had 2 decades of these sort of shows, but at that time it was a brand new kind of format, and I immediately said yes, and from day one. It was, having had a countdown level fame when I was 22, 23, and then going away from it at 28 and going to America and being invisible, and then coming back and being in my mid-40s, or no, I was 50. I turned 50 when I was on Idol. And then from one day to the next, literally from one day to the next, you were in every screen in Australia, in every corner of Australia, and we were getting, 3-4 million people watching. It was enormous. It was just fantastic, and I just love musicians. I love singers. It's something I really, 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 really enjoyed, and they paid me ridiculous amounts of money. And I only worked 2 days a week for 4 months a year for 5 years, but they paid me for 7 seasons because they fired me, and they'd just signed me to a long contract and had to pay me out. It was the best of all possible. I mean, the house I live in is thanks to Idol.
And the cherry on top is you got to sit next to Marsha Hines and talk music. I would have thought that's worth do it for nothing.
Yes, that's true. No, all of it was great. We were a great team, and it was just that wonderful moment where it was brand new, and we were seeing the most incredible talents. You know, the Guy Sebastians and all of those people, the Jessica Malboys, all of those people coming through. It was, you know, Lisa Mitchell, just so many fabulously talented young people. It was a great, great joy to me. I loved every single second of it. And then the cartoon aspect of it, of playing with the television and the red light and the camera and the touchdowns and all of that. I loved that ancient showbiz thing of it really, really suited me. I like it in every possible way. I'm not a live performer. I don't like touring. I don't like the circus life of my forefathers, of being in a different town every night. That I don't know that I could handle that. But flying to Sydney on a Sunday at noon, a business class, having a car pick you up, getting in business class, going to the other airport, having a car pick you up, going to a TV station for 4 hours, going to a hotel room to sleep, to do it again the next day, and be home on the Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning. And that's your work week. Sunday midday till Tuesday 10 a.m.
Mark, I want to touch on something there that you said about you're not being a live performer that well, but part of the magic, I suppose, about your role was deeply emotional, supportive, and clearly what you're talking about, your history now means that you are a very emotional person. So there was some real authenticity about you attaching yourselves to these young people coming on and bearing their musical soul. But there was also a bit of showmanship in you. I mean, the touchdown thing. Yes, how did you balance that?
Absolutely right. No, I loved that. That was the part. I mean, every part of it. I'm not going to say it was the part, because the music was the central factor. But being able to be a clown, being able to be a showman, being able to I loved it. I just loved it, and just that, it's that red line fever, the red light fever. When that red light's on and it's live, you own what happens next, and no matter what the producers want you to do, they can't stop you.
Yeah, we don't have producers in here, Mark, as is evident by the quality of the interviewing that you're having. and interestingly enough, I spoke to someone who last night, she's in her mid-40s, and I said we were interviewing you today, and she said, "Oh, the bloke from Idol." And I said, yeah, he was actually a very successful muso before that. And of course, I had forgotten to mention your stint at Albert Memorial as a fully qualified doctor. I'd forgot to throw that into the conversation. But if you ask, maybe it's the age that we're in. Rob's in his early to mid-90s. I'm in my early 60s. I'm tongue-in-cheek about Rob. He's much older than that. But if you said to me, name 3 people who appeared on Australian Idol as judges, I would say Mark Holden, Marsha Hines, and Ian Dicko. Now, that says something for what's happened since, and the purity and the energy associated with those first series. And again, if you ask me about acts, I'm saying Guy Sebastian, I'm saying Anthony Kalir, those sort of people. Yeah, it seems as though, in my mind, it's run its race.
And every one of them have maintained, not every one of them, but a good number of them have been able to not only maintain a career, but get bigger. I mean, Casey Donovan is becoming more and more of a star.
Oh my God, how good is her voice, Mark?
Time since the show.
Absolutely sensational.
And Rob Mills. I saw Rob Mills. I'm part of a lunch group of old TV people that meet called the Marquee Club, and we have lunch. And Rob Mills came and talked to us a couple of months ago, and his career as a musical theatre performer at the highest level in shows like Wicked, etc. And he's in the new thing Juliet at the moment. I mean, he's a legitimate musical theatre star now. So when he's doing these sort of shows, he's probably getting $10,000 a week. Bad old Millsy. Come on.
And he has to work 8 days a week, as distinct from you doing your 2.5 that you were doing in Sydney.
No, I found I did a couple of shows, and I found that very, very stressful, the 8 shows a week thing. And no, it's sort of torture to me. I like to do things once and then move on.
Perfect segue to my next question, Mark, at the future. Neil has been able to get a lot of people of your ilk. Russell Morris performed in Geelong last week. He's been relatively regular to come and have a chat with us on this show. Could you see yourself in the future as being a once-a-month cabaret performer?
No, I don't. For a start, I had cancer in 2009, right when I went to the bar, and it was thyroid cancer, but it got into my neck, and so there was a lot of slicing and dicing, and I barely have a voice anymore. And I did try to sing afterwards. I sing a bit in a men's group that I'm in, but it's all stuff. It's all amateur stuff, and it's just for the pleasure of it. And I have, I sing things very little range that are very low, but I couldn't do Never Gonna Fall in Love Again. I couldn't do I Want to Make You My Lady. I couldn't do any of those things anymore. I just don't have the voice anymore, and not only that, I just don't want to. But no, I'm more interested in singing with this old men's club of old musos. And we just play for our own pleasure, and I sing, Sinatra songs and stuff like that.
Yeah. And the success of, well, not success yet because it's not published, but the joy of writing a book, is that something you might redo?
I don't know. This one has been really a serious journey. What the book led me to was because the story of the circus, which is what I've fictionalized, takes the circus into the tribal lands of Victoria, and through that I met a Gunditjmara elder called Richard Franklin, and I've made an album with him, and I've co-produced an album of his material from, he's like nearly 60-ish, and we've made an album. He just did WOMAD, so I've sort of gotten back into the music business as a producer, and now I'm kind of managing his band in a way. Not what I didn't intend to do that, but it's sort of what happened, which is another reason why I retired from the bar, because I'd rather do this than be in court nowadays. I'd rather be involved in music in one way or another, and being involved with this man is the Gunditjmara elder, Richard Franklin. He's just really incredible. So it's sort of dovetailing the story that I've been uncovering for myself, and it's just a beautiful journey to be on,
Well, Mark, we have run out of time. We could sit here and chat for another 2 hours, I reckon. But it is absolutely a thrill to meet you, albeit via the telephone, uncover a story that we didn't have any insight to at all. And please keep in touch when the book comes out. We'd love to have another chat to you then.
Thank you very much. All the best.